You're live.
Super. Thank you very much, John. Okay, people are coming in. Let's give them a minute. 30, 32. I think we had like a 200 or so registrations. Okay, everybody, let's very slowly get started. A wonderful good afternoon from London today from myself. We'll give this another minute to allow people to sign in. In the meantime, I'm always extremely interested in where people are from, where you're signing in from, what the weather is where you're at. So please let us know in the comments at the bottom where you are signing in from. Let's see if we can make it all continents today. Usually Australia is missing. And then we'll give this another minute or so to warm up, and then we'll get this started. Can I just ask my wonderful co-facilitators, Sheila and Tony Ann, are you all good to go?
Mm-hmm. Good to go.
I had not an I'll take that as a go. All right. And can I ask you, Tony Ann, to start sharing the slide? Ah, fantastic.
Yes.
That's okay, cool. Hanno is from the Netherlands, not very far. I'm back in Hamburg tonight. Colombia, fantastic. That's Miss Christie. Tanzania, okay, well, we got three. Zurich, US, great. We got four continents. Tanzania, fantastic. Lydia's from Tanzania. Sheffield, UK. Thanks, Greg. That's not helpful. And Trondheim in Norway, yes, 2 degrees. Manuel, hello, Manuela. Nice to see you again. Northamptonshire. I feel I'm currently in London at the Humanitarian Finance Summit. And the Cotswolds, beautiful. Rachel. Do we have anybody from Asia yet? Rwanda, hello, Madison. Okay, shall we slowly get started, Tony Ann? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Can jump right in.
Fantastic. All right, wonderful. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are based, to a conversation with my two colleagues, Tony and our friend Sheila. I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. I'm calling this a conversation and hopefully not a webinar because the value of these things is in the conversation and not in us presenting and throwing information at you. This webinar has been designed as a reaction to a previous webinar about 6-7 weeks ago, whereby the conversation went on for so long that we said we need to dive into this fundamental question again. And Tony Ann, would you mind just going to this cover slide? Okay, yeah. The fundamental question, a little bit, purposely provocatively formulated, is should NGOs survive really without radically rethinking just everything? So that's the core question that has driven us all here today. I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves first, and then I'll come back to you. Sheila, as our valued guest and from our friends at Momentum, would you like to make the start?
Thanks, Chris. Sheila Nemi. I work for Humentum as a technical director, and my background is in governance, risk, and compliance. And also recently, I've been doing quite a bit of work on AI governance, like enterprise AI governance. Also looking at financial sustainability and financial resilience, and looking at a lot of institutional strengthening on this area. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being with us, Sheila. It's always good to have you on board. And my colleague Tony Ann, I think today you're in the home office, right?
Yes. So I'm in a small town called Riedlingen near Stuttgart, in Germany, and it's warm today, so I'm happy. Hi everyone. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Tonian Robinson. I'm a consultant at MZN International. My background is in a lot of different areas, but the core of it is that I work with NGOs and have worked with NGOs for almost a decade. Next year makes a decade. Um, I'm very, very happy to be here and to discuss with you, have a conversation with you about this topic. And I hope you find the webinar or the discussion very relevant and impactful and useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. My name is Christian Meyer-Natrup. I'm the founder and managing director of MZ International, having worked in the NGO space since 2011. That's 15 years now. I'm getting old. And I take care mostly of strategy. I share Sheila's passion for good governance because otherwise there's no strategy, right, Sheila? And I particularly focus on impact investment and funding, so via grant and via private capital funding, what makes this world better ultimately. And that means we need to get some more funding into the NGOs. Let's dive in. That's with the introductions. I think the first part is mine. And I'm going to be purposely a little bit provocative. Why does the NGO model no longer traditional works? Now, bearing in mind that there is no such thing as a traditional NGO model, every NGO is different. I'm hoping that I can still find three parts which are absolutely questioning the business model and the validity of many NGOs. Number one, we have this overarching environment of geopolitical fragmentation. So this Western, the neoliberal consensus, that has thoroughly broken. And that's not just because a certain guy moved into a certain White House, but has a lot to do with that. This has serious consequences for what it means to run an organization that wants to do some good, whether you're on livelihoods, humanitarian, development, financial inclusion, advocacy, or whatever. You used to rely and operate within this presumption, shared value system. Oh, we've lost Sheila. Are you there? I think we've lost my colleague and we've lost the slides. Let me share them. There we are. Sheila, can you see the slides again?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Here we go. Okay. Can you see the slides? Sheila?
Yes, Chris. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So sorry for that small hiccup. Not sure what happened to Tony in there. So the second part is the financial instability, ladies and gentlemen. The development system, again, is not just unstable since Trump. It has been unstable. It's been heavily donor-centric for, well, ever, actually. You know, we used to do development aid, humanitarian, with the donors and centric, and they have built a system, a funding system that is donor-centric. And now these donors are withdrawing or are being dismantled. So the system has always been unstable and is now collapsing. I think it's worthwhile noting that it's always been unstable. And then, of course, we were battling the technological acceleration. AI is fundamentally changing how some of our partner organizations work in the world. You know, finding proposals, writing them, arguing theory of change, refining it, you know, goes a lot faster right now if you use it right. And that fundamentally changes and reduces the amount of people that are operating. I've got 5 things, though, that I'd like to sort of share with you. And my thesis here that I would love to be put to the test, and feel free to criticize this, Sheila Antonian, is I think NGOs must radically rethink, and they must either adapt or die. And I've got 5 reasons for that. The most common known reason is the funding cliff. You know, traditional grant funding is just rapidly drying up. And has been drying up since several years. So these NGOs must really pivot from this outdated charity model to a way more sustainable co-investment strategy. The other part is a debate that's been in the sector for a long time. This is about decolonizing aid. This top-down, Western-centric structure really perpetuates some of the dynamics and alienates communities. I think, Shia, you and I had a conversation about this once many years ago, actually, 2 years ago. So these organizations, you know, we had some of them dismantling their headquarters already, or dismantling headquarter control and channel funding directly to local actors. A lot has been done by many organizations in good faith, but that's further questioning the legitimacy of NGOs. That brings me on to this overall legitimacy crisis. Frankly speaking, when I have the privilege to not just spend my time in boardrooms and in investor councils, but actually go out into the countryside. And Sheila, I've been in your country recently, in Nairobi, just traveled north of Kenya and talked to a community there around a faith-based organization. And it was, again, extremely clear that they are deeply unhappy to be talked about by international organizations. They want, they say, look, they need to step back and they need to be logistical facilitators that amplify direct local leadership. This is not the first time we heard this. I mean, we must hear this all the time as well. And then there is this digital trust. I'm not sure why I said it twice, but it is there. Simply speaking, many organizations, many donor agencies that we talk to have continue to operate as if it's 1995 or maybe 2015, where you have these outdated manual reporting systems where people are looking at spreadsheets and putting in things. Sheila, you're smiling. I know I know you know what I'm talking about. This just drains financial resources, and none of the investors we speak to, none of the DFIs, the development finance institutions we speak to, and frankly, more importantly, very few of the recipient communities. For example, my colleague is currently in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. Say, look, if they are not operating a modern AI-driven real-time data analytics organization that guarantees a way faster and way better transparency and operational efficiency, we are not interested in partnering with them because it's just too expensive. So these are four of the reasons I'm thinking we need to change. And then I think most people here may know this already, but the funding crisis is very one-sided. It's not like all funding has gone away. In fact, if you look at the impact investment market, it is continuously rising with a forecast of this achieving 250 billion by 2030. Between 2024 and 2025, we've had another big increase. We reached 100 billion. Now, not every impact investment or every innovative finance mechanism is the same, but the idea, I think this is all I'm trying to say here, the idea that there is no money around is completely ridiculous. Last year, for example, I had a memorable conversation during the New York Climate Week in November last year to the head of a large pension fund whose members have voted that 10% of the pension fund's money should be invested into impact active investments. It's a huge amount. It's a several billion big fund. And the CEO told me in a room with no uncertain terms saying, where do we find these projects? I don't think that the problem in many development areas, I think humanitarian is a bit different, but in many development areas is a lack of money, but a lack of investable fundable initiatives or projects. In other words, the money is there, but the structures to receive it, not as a grant, not as a donation, that's what most NGOs are still struggling with. In other words, the supply is there, the demand is struggling. You have in the demand to create some structures that can welcome either an outcome-based finance mechanism, an impact investment, a development bond, a multi-asset account, whatever. Okay, so I don't want to take too much time, so I'm going to skim this. But at Amsterdam, we work with a lot of partners, and basically we go in, we partner for the long term, and we change their business model. And it often includes, looking at starts often with a funding diversity analysis. Then we identify catalytic grant capital, so that's still a grant. Then we use that not to implement a program, but to use that as a innovative finance or blended finance initiative going, and then we go on and scale this. And the trick here is really this. And maybe Sheila, you will talk about governance. The trick is not so much is the money there. The trick is not so much is the realization, yes, we need to change. The trick is, does the board, the management have the capacity, the intellectual reach to think beyond the next quarter, to think beyond the next sort of funding crunch, into 2 years, 3 years, 4 years long-term thinking in order to fundamentally change the way their organization is financed. And in organizations which have good management, we see this as a success. In organizations which don't, I'm afraid we will see a lot of organizations failing and stepping down and going bankrupt. That's pretty much it from my side. That's my 2 cents worth. I want to skip this one for the interest of time, and I'm going to go over to Tony Ann. Tony Ann, are you back with us?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that.
No worries, we managed. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So before I begin this section, I just want to kind of make things a little bit more digestible for the audience. I know we're positioning things as a rethinking, but even though it's phrased as a radical rethinking, I think it's important to understand that it's a practical rethinking and to approach it as, small steps that you can implement, some that you are already implementing, as you will see a little bit further down in the slide. But essentially, what I want to convey from my little section is that the tools are there. Capabilities might need strengthening. You might need additional tools, but these are small, concrete steps that you can take now. Can you go back to the slide? Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
No problem, no problem. So beginning with what are some key considerations for an NGO in today's sector? What you're trying to aim for, and this is building a bit on what Chris just went through, you would like to be as diversified as possible financially. You want to ensure that you are using the most contemporary versions of tools or new tools and ensuring these are integrated across different operations within your organization, and to focus more on being outcome driven and being results focused. That enables you to navigate these shifting mechanisms and to, increase the capacities within the organizations to manage some of these rapid changes that we're going through. At step one, we have redesigning your funding plan. And essentially what you would like to do here is to do a type of funding analysis. You want to look at your funding mix, the types of different donors, different types of funding even, as well as, how these have been ongoing for the past 3 or 5 years. You want to look at where you're dependent. You want to look at where some changes happened that weren't so favorable to you, and just kind of have that as like a stock take of where you are as an organization. With that, you want to look ahead and see how best you can strengthen the diversification of your funding, ensuring that you put systems in place to reduce risks and reduce the level of volatility that can impact your overall implementation. Under this slide, or under step one, you will see mention of things such as like catalytic grants, as well as results-based or performance-linked financing. Now, results-based and performance-linked financing are things that we already know as NGOs. We understand that there are some financing mechanisms where disbursements are made by achieving something, or achieving a goal. And this is something that is still obtaining in today's sector. More and more donors are kind of positioning under that financing mechanism. So this is what I mean when I say the tools are already there. You already have some capabilities. It's just about sharpening these and learning others to progress a little bit more seamlessly. When it comes to step two, this is just making sure that you are integrating your systems, technology systems, record keeping systems, accounting systems, just to make sure that it's a little bit holistic across the organization. So what usually happens, or what has happened in my experience, is that different teams have different access or knowledge of certain tools, and this is not shared across the whole organization. So what we're trying to convey here is that these systems should be integrated in a way that different team members who may not be as versed in a particular system have the knowledge and have the communication to progress in their own part of a project delivery or operational delivery. And then lastly, which we'll touch into on the next slide, is the shift from a focus solely on project delivery to a more programmatic or portfolio style delivery. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so when we talk about shifting from project thinking to programmatic or portfolio thinking, what we're trying to convey here is that usually when we focus at the level of projects, these are usually very siloed. Teams work in isolation, results happen in isolation, and challenges are dealt with in isolation. Having a programmatic approach enables, for an organization to start bringing things together, connecting projects, connecting teams where strengths lie, and, to just reduce duplication and spot gaps, especially very early on to minimize the possibilities of great disruptions to overall delivery. So here we have a few steps that you can take into consideration when trying to approach connecting projects to make this portfolio level project delivery or outlook. The first thing you have to do is to clarify what are your outcome or what are your goals over 3 to 5 years. You can even go to 10 if that's possible. But what you want to do here is to really focus on your mission, really focus on the things that would help you to achieve this mission and have that as a starting point for all the things that would complement operations, project delivery, and so on. The next thing you have to do is to look at your current projects and assess that against the goals that you've outlined before, that long-term goal. And, just kind of reformat where necessary. Maybe you need to cut different things here and there to make things match, but your overall objective is to connect similar projects together and work within that portfolio level delivery to maximize the synergies between the projects or among the projects so you can have the best possible outcome. You can have different portfolios for different types of projects. It depends on the size of your organization. Yeah, and then when it comes to the funding mix, we'll go into that a little bit in the next slide, but essentially you're connecting that to both your long-term goal and your project reformatting or adjusting, etc. So you want to kind of assess how different projects can be funded in different ways and kind of work from that. Lastly, we have ensuring that there's alignment between the leadership and governance as you're making this portfolio level adjustments, but Sheila will take you a little bit more into that in her section. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Tony. I just want to highlight the fact that what you said is like making sure you said something along the lines of making sure that asking yourself how each project can be funded before immediately going about project design. And I think therein lies my experience, a major fault in that as non-profit organizations, we're often used to one type of funding, either donations or grants. So therefore, we're trying to shoehorn a project into the grant envelope or into the amount of donations we have, rather than actually look at what could we deliver, what could solve the problem, how much funding we need. I think that's easy to say, but that's when you then get down to pricing initiative.
Yeah.
I always thought this takes a massive culture change at those program manager level, right?
You're completely right. But I'll go a bit more into this in this slide.
Awesome.
Yeah. So essentially just building on what Chris just mentioned. You have to ensure that when you're going about, trying to adjust to this new, very diverse financing mechanism feel that we have in international development these days, you have to kind of align that to your mission thesis. That's your Rock of Gibraltar, that's where everything comes from. And from that, we have projects. And as we're trying to link projects together, we have to also consider how to fund different projects. So we have here that you should clarify your long-term objectives, your outcomes, especially that the organization is setting to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years to make it a little bit more digestible, but we could even go to 10 years if you're comfortable with that level of projection. So look at how different projects are structured, not finance-wise yet, but just look at how your projects are structured. Search the internet, look at how different projects are funded. There are so many examples of similar projects to what every NGO has going on that has been funded innovatively, and that's outside of traditional grant finance. So
Right.
you can do kind of like a case study, just like a quick research analysis, see what's going on in the sector, see how this can possibly work for your project, but do spend the time to consider the different attributes or the differentiating attributes of your project to kind of understand that it's not always a one size fits all. So just because you see a project in a different area was funded by, let's say, blended finance, for example, you have to look at your own project's attributes, the persons you're working with, the communities you're trying to support to see if this is the best fit. But in doing that, you're already accumulating the knowledge to make that decision. So just take your time, assess what's out there, think about, how your project is already set up, what changes can be made. Maybe if you connect it to something else, something can work in terms of it can be financed this way. And at MZN International and Human Planet, we're already well versed in the area. We work with many, many different organizations. So we are here to help you to make these decisions. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to achieve is a reduction in the risk of depending on one to four, solitary donors for our funding. We've already
Yeah.
seen what happened with USAID. So it's just to ensure that we have that foundation, that stability to continue doing the good work that we are doing. And I think that's it for me.
Completely agreed. Oops, sorry, I'm not sure what. Sheila, you're up.
Thank you. Next slide. I'll now look at it from the governance perspective. I know Tony Ann has gone into looking at what we need to change from an operational perspective. And you'll notice what she's saying quite mirrors what I'm saying, but now I'm looking at what at a governance, at a board level, at a leadership level, how does this actually look like? And the first thing we need to acknowledge, and I think Chris also mentioned this, that a lot of NGOs have inherited governance models that were built for a different era, for a different time. And they're not enabling NGOs to actually respond to the realities that we are facing. So you find governance models that are very compliance heavy, where financial oversight is centered on meeting donor requirements, reporting obligations, and not looking at financial oversight from how do we make this organization resilient and sustainable for the future. Then an era whereby there was a lot of stable grant funding cycle, which we know is not the reality right now. So we had funding models that were really reinforcing donor dependency, short to modern term project thinking. So you find governance that really still looks at that very closely without it going to that next level of thinking about diversified financial strategy and long-term financial sustainability, where those questions are actually not being asked at a board level. And then also having a governance which is very technology blind, or it was designed at a time where the technology cycles were very slow. There was a lot of human-driven decision making. So you find there's no formal mandate to oversee digital system AI use, data governance, or even acknowledging that nowadays we have a lot of automated decision-making tools, and or even if it's a human making a decision, that decision has been very much influenced by AI or any other technology. So because of these governance gaps, you're finding that there are certain organizations, there are certain realities that organizations are not able to actually respond to. And I'm going to look at just 4 areas that they can, organizations can actually look at and be able to see that. I won't go into a lot of details, just an overview. And then, so I picked 4 areas. This is on data literacy and being able to build capacity and capability for boards to read data, understand data, interrogate on data, and act on data. So moving from just, here's a report, look at it, approve, but now digging a bit better, a bit deeper on the data analytics that are behind the reports. Then something I'm calling financial engineering. And that word is very deliberate because it moves from financial compliance and our normal financial management to now something a bit more sophisticated, where you're looking at how do we diversify our funding models? How do we respond to revenue volatility, which is the reality we are having right now? And how do we actually think for long-term financial sustainability? Then third is technology oversight. And here we are going to look at governance from overseeing AI, digital systems, and some of the risks that come with it, example, the cyber risks. And finally, outcome-focused leadership, which speaks to what Tony Ann was talking about on looking at moving from project to project to more of portfolio governance. You're looking at the organization from a portfolio perspective and moving away from looking at things from a small project to project perspective. So next slide.
Sheila, can I just say, because you would never say it, that the Humentum MZN partnership here is really, really interesting and really, really good. Now, we enjoy working with you there because you focus very much on some of these areas. We focus very much on the financial engineering and on the technology, etc. And this is a very complementary partnership, and I can recommend anybody to use the numerous resources that Humentum puts out on their site. I can really recommend those to skip through and read through on your very good website. So just want to say that.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So I'll go through the 4 pillars just to give examples of what does this look like. And then finally, I'll just give some ways in which some practical ways that some things that an organization can start doing. So when we look at data literacy, this is from a governance perspective, it's moving from here is a report, please approve it, and into more interrogating that report, interrogating the data, being able to identify what actually is missing, what are some of the assumptions, where do we have weak indicators, and even questioning the quality of data that is driving the reports that are coming to governance at that governance level, linking financial data, operational and impact data, and asking what's the story that all this is giving us. And also just emphasizing that for all this to happen at that board level and leadership level, there has to be what Chris was saying, the capacity. There has to be the skills. Somebody has to be skilled to be able to analyze data, and also just investing on skills development on data competency. I always say you don't have to have everybody being a data expert, but they should have that minimum ability to now be able to, given that there's a lot of things that are data-driven, to be able to understand data, read it, interrogate, and make data-driven decisions. Next slide.
Makes sense. Here we go.
Second is financial engineering, which I know MZN are very good experts in this, but this is just mainly now moving from what I was telling you, compliance, moving over and above management to now thinking strategically. So what financial techniques and tools can we have to be able to ask how sustainable is our financial model? What's our funding mix? What's the financial resilience strategy we have as an organization? Now, being able to interrogate your funding concentration risk, donor dependency ratio. Do you have any revenue volatility exposure? Do you have any buffer in terms of liquidity? How realistic is your cost recovery? And then I always say with all this to be able to happen, there's still that aspect where I say that the board needs to have the ability to read and interpret finances, They need to be able to challenge these finances, and there needs to be somebody who's a technical expert at that board sitting who's asking the right financial questions over and above looking at reports. Now, thinking in terms of now that financial engineering, financial diversification, and just doing a bit more technical work to be able to support the organization in its financial sustainability work. Next.
You wouldn't believe how often I get the message of some boards asking me to just spend a day with them to do exactly what you just said and understand their own financial reports. And I always wonder how is that possible? How do you not have that person on your board? Exactly like you say.
And I also think, Chris, even not just having a technical person, I think the challenge is sometimes you now have to stop thinking over, that compliance. We've ticked the compliance box. We have financial management, but now thinking over and above and saying, okay, this is the organization. How do we ensure we are financially sustainable? And that's a whole different conversation, which I think very few organizations at board level are actually asking themselves.
I would even go a step further, Sheila. It's one reason to go from, as you say, from compliance to asking the question you just asked, how are we financially sustainable? But then the next one after that is, how do we scale, how do we grow far enough and fast enough to actually make a meaningful impact on the problem? That's a different conversation yet again. So that's then impact linked, right?
Yes, it is. And yeah, so now we can go to pillar 3, which is digital and AI oversight. Over here, you'll notice I've really concentrated on AI. And as Chris said, it's really bringing a lot of changes to organization. It's a reality we are facing. And I always say, because I'm a very big advocate for enterprise AI governance, it's never the same. There are some organizations that adapt AI at scale. They make a strategic decision. We are going to adapt AI at scale, and AI becomes mission critical. So for those organizations, I say your AI governance must be very structured. It must be very visible, and it has to be very deliberate. There are those who say, we are not going to do AI at scale, but we want to adapt AI for efficiency purposes and to just make us work easier. So they do also need AI governance, but not as sophisticated as that organization which is now adapting AI at scale. And I always say, despite those two, there's also the third organization which might not be acknowledging, but the reality is, in one way or another, AI is impacting how your organization works. So in terms of AI governance, there are 4 aspects. I always say, if you get these 4 right, you'll be able to, whichever level that you pick it up, you'll be able to actually have a very strong AI governance structure. So there's the adopt side, where you now say, we are adopting whichever level of adoption you pick. And here you have an example, you have like an AI use policy. What are the permitted tools? How do you handle data? Who is accountable as a staff? Then you assign, once you've adopted, you assign responsibility, decide who is the AI risk owner, what are your AI governance arrangements you're going to have. And remember, you have to also look at the jurisdiction, because there are a lot of laws and regulations that are coming up on this perspective. Then there's the AI audit. These are the periodic review of your tools, outputs, and risks. Then you have to align all your AI and digital work to your mission and values. Next slide.
Can I just say, but on the side note, Shia, do you mind?
No, it's okay. Continue.
My colleague, Tony Ann, is the programmatic lead, and my colleagues, we have a number of AI engineers in Amsterdam. And we are currently designing a system that we call GrantWire. And we're doing this in order to make, grant funding is going down, but it's getting hyper competitive. But as a social enterprise, we wanted to find a way to make grant funding easier to find. You shouldn't have to pay another database in order to find the right grant. So it's in its development stage. And Tony, I think you're moving this over to beta testing. And we still need about 5-6 testers who would be happy to test our AI grant finding system, and then give us every 2 weeks or so a half-an-hour conversation or a feedback loop back to Tony Ann in order to improve the viability. So this is before we launch it publicly. If anybody here listening is saying, yeah, I know we regularly search for AI for grants, and we could use a tool like that. It's free of charge, and it will. By the way, we will donate it to the sector. It will always remain free. Then please let Tony Ann know. We still need like how many more testers do you need, Tony Ann?
5 to 6 more, like you said, yeah.
Great, 5 to 6 more. We do this for like 4, 5, 6 weeks, something like this.
Well, a week or two.
A week or two. Okay, much faster. Sorry. There we go. So, but Sheila, I thought it fits in here because we are just talking about AI. Yeah, and that is an AI-driven tool as well. It learns what you look for. It learns what you like, and then it gives you more of the same grants.
No, that's quite fascinating. Maybe I'll have another conversation with Tony Ann to learn more about that. Yeah. Okay. So then next slide on Pillar 4. So Pillar 4 is on outcome focused decision making. And this is also quite linked to what Tony Ann was talking about, moving from project to project oversight to more portfolio, being able to link governance decisions to where is our highest impact, and then moving from activity-based decision to more mission outcomes, more impact outcome, and just basically asking better questions when it comes to decision making. Next slide. So this one sorry?
I'm just getting a ton of messages on the chat of people interested in testing the system. Thank you very much to our friends at Helvitas and Fairtrade, etc. Tony, and if you wouldn't mind just putting your email address down so that people can register with you. Thank you. Sorry for that.
It's okay. I was trying to say these are just some examples of what at a governance level you can actually do to just address some of the 4 pillars that we looked at. One is to make sure your digital and AI governance becomes a board agenda. I always say if this has not yet become a board agenda, I think it's high time it is. Whether you want to or not, digital and AI governance is going to affect your organization. Whether there's been a strategic decision about it, but I'm really a big advocate. It has to be part of your board agenda. Things like mapping where AI is being currently used, developing an AI use policy, being able to have a more board, which is more data literate in terms of it can actually understand not just AI aspects, but things like data, how to read data, how to interpret data, how to make decisions based on data. And then what Tony Ann also talked about, doing a funding and revenue risk analysis, being able to understand, are we having any donor dependency? What's our exposure when it comes to revenue volatility? How sustainable is our financial model? And this has to be driven at a governance. So even if operationally you're doing it, the governance also has to drive some of these things. And then aspects such as redesigning your board questions to ask better governance questions, like looking at what are your recurring agenda items and how do we ask better questions, and being able to actually even query your own governance model right now and see where is it limiting you in terms of being able to be more responsive to the current realities that we are having as an NGO. So that's it from now. Over to you, Chris.
I think that's pretty much it. We're moving on to the Q&A. I did forget to mention that, yes, there's a recording which we will share. Yes, we will share the slides. So hopefully you didn't take ferocious notes. You can join the Humentum or the MZN training sessions, which include AI and proposal writing and things like that. We're doing another webinar next week, particularly on innovative finance. And then, of course, at the end of March comes our largest webinar, always well attended, this time looking into the funding briefing the next quarter, what donors are doing what. We are moving over to the EU 27 to 31 budget. There will be updates on that. So make sure you sign up to this webinar. There we go. And that's it. That's it from us for right now. So we do some Q&A, always the most important part, frankly. And I'll stop the screen share and we'll see what we have in the questions. Let me just moderate them a bit. Give me a question. Phil, nice to see you again, by the way. Wonderful to have you here. Phil is asking, what are the best ways of presenting your offer to pension funds, impact investors, private philanthropists? who share your passions. Sounds like a question for me. Shall I go ahead on the funding side, Tonian? Sheila, is that okay? Phil, the best way of presenting your offer is not to just ask for money, but to have an investable proposition. Do you have a way of receiving the funding, of reporting for it transparently, of clearly identifying the risk? Do you have any de-risking capital? So do you have a structure that is like you've built a structure for a grant recipient, your NGO? Do you have a structure, a project, or a special purpose vehicle that allows you to receive private capital? But once you have that, you can do this several times. It'll take a culture change and it will take an institutional change in addition to what you have. But that is certainly required to be done for any organization that wishes to continue going to exist. So reach out. You've got my email address if you want any more details specific to your organization. I'm randomly selecting one. So we have a number here. Let me just a lot of them are finance related. I'm just going to start at the bottom. Over to you, I think, Sheila. Benjamin Fear4, sorry, Benjamin, if I'm butchering your name here, is asking, what would be the best way to introduce AI into your organization? Sheila, what do you think?
So first of all, I always say, I am sure informally already your organization is using AI. So let's say first you also need to map and understand where and how is the organization currently using AI. And when I say that is because we have something called shadow AI. If you've not formally introduced it, there's a high likelihood your staff are already using AI. So you just first of all need to understand how are they using it, why are they using it, and how is this impacting your organization? Secondly, I talk about an organization having an AI strategy, because sometimes it's good to just say, oh, AI is good, but what exactly do you want AI to do to your organization? Do you want it to be a mission critical tool that drives your mission? Do you want it to just be there for efficiency purposes? Do you want it to just be part of what we are seeing, a lot of software integration? So there has to be an AI strategy. And it's something that leaders have to sit and strategize the same way you do your strategy. What's our AI strategy? What do you want AI to do? And now from there, you're now able to identify what tools are out there. And are you going to build it internally? Are you going to partner with another organization that's building, like for example, what Chris is doing at MZN International? Or are you going to actually buy an off-the-shelf tool or product? So those are some of the ways. Benjamin, I can send for you some articles that we've actually written just on how to go about all this, and maybe that can kind of get into the more details for you. If you share with me your email, I'll do that.
Thank you. Laura Pierce, you've asked, can you share best ways to secure catalytic funding when so many donors are looking for clear evidence to release that investment? Pilots, Laura goes on and says, pilots are great, but results are only a small scale. I'm going to start with an answer and then ask my colleague Tonian to come in on this one. Is that okay, Tonian?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah. So, Laura, I'm not sure which organization you're from, but it's a very good question. I think you're asking the right question, and you're absolutely right. A nice pilot really isn't enough. But you want to, once you've done the pilot, you want to reframe your pilot as a de-risking asset. So the pilot itself is the thing that de-risked it. Fund investors are risk averse, as funders are as well, as we all are, and they want a risk reduction, not just innovation. So be very explicit about what uncertainties has your pilot eliminated, I would say. What assumptions have you now validated? And what remains risky? So that you have this proof of concept plus the proof of demand. and not just impact. You need these two things in addition. And secondly, I would say you may want to quantify the economics quite early on. And by that I mean is you want to, even at a small scale, show the cost per outcome, the unit economics, the pathway to scale. So what pathway to cost reduce to scale? What are these things? So if your pilot say reached, I don't know, 500 people or 50 people, the donors and the investors need to see how that 500 becomes 5,000 or 50,000 financially, not just programmatically. I think that's quite an important one. And then the last thing before my colleague Tony Ann maybe wants to add on anything on this, you do, similar to Phil's question earlier, you need to structure a phased funding approach. So the pilot has been the first phase. Is there a gate stage? Is there a milestone-based disbursement that you're now introducing to the next scale? Is there a story that the investors can see where you move from pilot to initiation to scaling? Are you welcoming matching commitments? I hope all this makes sense. Is there a blended finance structure that allows different types of capital with different risk and reward alternatives for each type of investor, where, for example, the grant funding or the catalytic funding takes the majority of the operational risk, but the majority of the fund comes from the private sector. So basically you're saying, look, we are pretty confident right now, and here's the remaining risk. I hope that makes any sense. So I'm a chartered accountant. I hope I didn't dive into too much jargon here. Tony Ann, police me on that one, please. Tony Ann, anything to add on that?
Yeah, so there was a lot of jargon. So just to kind
Oh
of
God.
simplify things a little more, you have to kind of think about it as the pilot is your start. You want to demonstrate that you have the internal capabilities and knowledge to take this long term. And in taking this long term, that means not just relying on donors and other traditional forms of financing, but make it long term in that you're willing to engage with more diverse funders. So this is what Chris was mentioning when he was talking about investors. Yeah. And these investors, like he mentioned, they don't want to lose their money. That's the risk that we were talking about. They want to ensure that whatever they are funding, investing in has all that it takes to go long term and for them to benefit from it. It might not be in the traditional sense of an investor like profits, but there has to be some benefit afforded to them or that they can receive. So think of the catalytic funding as a start and a demonstration that you're able to take it long term. And as Chris was mentioning, you have to have all your, required quantifiable items outlined from the beginning. So in taking that pilot, you're able to kind of start and grow incrementally. I think of it as kind of like a good thing to start small and then build because it gives you the chance to grow and do so kind of organically. So it's not a lot at once, especially for your team capabilities. And it also allows you to build the relationships that you need to build to take this long term. And also to just have the confidence for the persons that you are supporting, the communities, the different groups to, trust you in taking it long term. So it's a start. I would think of it as a start and I would think of it as a good thing. We'll get there, as we learn more about these different types of funding and how to interact with different stakeholders. So yeah, I think of it as a start.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tony. And Sheila, you're already responding to Manuel in writing to Manuela Pastore, who's at a fantastic organization. And Manuela is asking, I'm going to put this to you, Sheila, if we base more decisions on AI, we need to check whether the data we give are the right ones. Do we need additional data in addition to the traditional ones, in brackets that she says normally they're very isolated projects. What do you think? Sheila, do you want to give this one a go?
Okay, so I was trying to give him an answer. So there are different aspects of looking at this. So the first thing I would have asked was that if the AI is being used for project-related work, then already you might have the data already in-house, so you don't need to look for any other data outside. But if it's not being used for project-related work, it's being used for any something else that you don't have data for, then you'd actually need data. But there's a caveat, because if you're building your AI capabilities, like you're the one building these tools internally, you do need data to train that AI. But if you're getting whatever capabilities for AI through an external vendor, it's already been trained. So you'll just come in and integrate it into your systems, and then it will start learning based on the data that you're feeding it. I think the main important aspect is to first figure out where are we using this AI? What data sets do we need? And is our data set correct? Do you have the correct governance? Because remember, we say that data is what drives AI. It's like the fuel for AI. So if whatever data you're giving it is not clean, it's not accurate, it becomes the garbage in, garbage out. So it's learning on very inaccurate data. So there's a whole data governance aspect you need to look at. But you might not need it if already you have the data in-house and the data is accurate, it's reliable, it's accessible. You'll only need data from outside. If you don't have correct data, it's not reliable, it's not accessible. But also training it with data from outside has its caveats, because it's also coming in having learned from other organizations that might not be similar to yours. So initially, its outputs might not be mirroring what you want. So there's a whole conversation on data governance that comes in. I hope I have answered that for you and I've not confused you more.
Probably. No, kidding. Great. So because we're on the hour, a few final announcements. Do sign up to the quarterly funding update that shares a lot of updates on the grant world, the philanthropy world, and then the impact investment and innovative finance world. That's really quite a useful one. That's why it's one of the most popular ones as well. Finally, if you are interested in joining the beta test, and if you are willing to invest the time to give Tony and our AI engineers some good feedback on what we still need to build on GrantWire, then please reach out to Tony Ann. I think Tony Ann, you shared your email. Thank you very much. We do need a few more testers. Bear in mind, we are still at the beta phase. So beta customer testing, we will continuously improve it, and we will keep this tool free of charge, purposely and indefinitely, with a full functionality, so that at least with smaller grant funding, you can find it easier to find the grants going forward. Secondly, a lot of the questions here we didn't get to. Tanka made a very good comment there on the questions. We can't get to them anymore. But a lot of the questions here are about blended finance, innovative finance, and how do we move forward. I want to close with that innovative finance is not going to be the golden bullet to all our problems grant-wise. Most organizations, I think, will fail in adopting, non-profit organizations will fail to adopt innovative finance because, Sheila, what you said, their governance model, their management model isn't active enough. Isn't able to manage the culture change from becoming a localized and fully decolonized co-investor to that from a northern grant implementer. And that's maybe I'm getting old. I don't mean this in a cynical way, but I mean this in a way that those which manage the shift to expand their business model will have a chance to continue thriving and actually continue really addressing the problems you're looking to address beyond the 1, 2, 3%, but really at scale. And that's really exciting because thus those impact investments, those innovative finance streams are less dependent upon politics. That can only be a good thing. Sheila, I want to thank you very much for joining here today from Nairobi. Much appreciated. We deeply value the Momentum Amsterdam partnership. And Tony Ann, thank you very much for joining here as well. Thank you, everybody, for giving us your time. I hope you found this useful. MZN remains and is and will always remain a social enterprise. If you have topics you would like us to dive into, please let us know. And then we will try to accommodate that. This webinar has been a response to lots of demands, so we can do something similar. Most of our services these days are also subsidized, so we can hopefully work with ever more local and ever more localized organizations as well, not just the big ones. Thank you very much, everybody. I wish you a wonderful end of the week from London, and see you at another webinar very soon. Goodbye, Tony Ann. Goodbye, Sheila.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Goodbye. Bye.